Okay, Algebra 2, this is going to be 4.3, Part 4. So we did all that factoring stuff in the first 3 parts. What we want to do is talk about, like, how do you use this? Because in some of our homework and some of our problems, they're going to say, hey, I'm giving you the solutions, or I'm giving you the roots. Remember, roots, zeros, solutions, x-intercepts, they all mean the same thing. So what if they gave you some of these values? They're saying that these are where it crosses. So if I go here and I say it crosses at 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 here, and at 3/4, which is somewhere about here, that means I could have a parabola that goes like that. What is the equation? So what I did is I came up with a couple steps here. And all you have to do is just take your answers, your solutions, those roots here, and set them equal to x. So that's pretty easy. So x equals 3/4, x equals 5. Now, what we'll do then is step 2 is that you bring everything to the x side. So I want to take 3/4 and subtract it over here. I want to take 5, subtract it over here. So I end up with x minus 3/4 equals 0. X minus 5 equals 0. Now, by having this, if you remember back to what we did in, when we did the solve by graphing in the earlier section, these are equations set equal to 0. It means where it crosses the x-axis. These guys right here that I just put parentheses around end up becoming factors. And they are factors of this polynomial, or this quadratic in a case. So x minus 3/4 and x minus 5. And that, both of them, no matter what, if I multiply them together, they could equal 0, so therefore they end up still being equal to 0 when you multiply them. So what I'm going to do is just FOIL these now. Multiply them back together, and when I multiply these back together, I will end up having a quadratic, or parabola, and I can put it in standard form. So x times x is x squared. X times negative 5 is negative 5x. Negative 3/4 times x is a minus 3/4 x. And negative makes a positive. 3/4 times 5, I'm going to take the 5 and multiply it to 3. So I end up with 15 over the 4. And that will still equal 0. Now normally I got to put these things together, I gather up my like terms. Now when I go to do that, it doesn't seem like it's going to be very fun because one's a fraction, one's not a fraction. So do you notice that we also have fractions over here? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to multiply everything. So all 4 of these parts and 0, don't forget what you do to one side, you still have to do to the other. You multiply it by a single number to get rid of all of your denominators. Here's the cool thing, is that the denominator of both of these is the same. It's a 4. So I'm going to change colors here for you. And I'm going to multiply both sides by 4. Now granted, that's still 0. Okay? But now I can distribute in 4 times x squared is 4x squared. 4 times negative 5 is a negative 20x. But when I multiply the 4 to the negative 3/4, the 4's will cancel, leaving you with negative 3x. And the same thing happens all the way across with 15, and the 4's will cancel, and you're left with plus 15. Didn't leave myself a lot of room there. So now I can gather up my like terms. A negative 20 minus 3, I'm not going to do anything with the 4x squared, is a minus 23x plus 15 equals 0. That's 0 I don't like. 0. Therefore, you have a quadratic. It's in standard form. Now this 0 we could technically change. You could change it to f of x. You could change it to y. So y equals 4x squared minus 23x plus 15. So therefore, we are able to take the zeros, or the roots, and turn it around and write the equation, or find the equation for it. And so, one of the last parts that I want to talk about for this lesson is called the zero product property. And remember that if I do 2 times 0, it's 0. If I do 3 times 0, it's 0. Anything times 0 is 0. So if that's the case, if I say that two numbers, I don't know what they are, have to multiply to equal 0, well then you have choices. Either the first one has to be 0, the second one has to be 0, or possibly both are equal to 0. And so we can use this and to help solve equations. Now, what you have been doing the last couple lessons is you're taking problems and breaking them into problems that look like this. You are factoring. Factoring is breaking it apart. And so now you have things called factors, and these factors are set equal to 0. Well, guess what? It is following the A times B, because this can be like A, this can be like B, which means I can then say that 2x plus 2x, well, x minus 2 is equal to 0, or x plus 3 equals 0, and I can solve them individually to find out what the x value would be to make that true. I have to add 2, and so I get x equals 2. If I subtract 3 to both sides, remember, these are canceling, x equals negative 3. So the two solutions to this problem are 2 and negative 3. That's where, here's the cool thing, if this particular problem, negative 3 and 2, that is the zeros, that's a bad line, that would be the x-intercepts, that would be the solutions or the roots to that quadratic. So what we're going to do for your homework is we're going to still kind of go through that same process that you were factoring, but then I'm going to have you then go a little one step further and say, I want to find the actual values, the x value that makes it 0. So here's your homework for part 4. I want you guys to factor each one of these and then solve it, which means find the values of x that make it true. Have a great day.